Einen tek tikla tasarladigi o data 5 yil yashamak. Gersel de Kusersuz, Jursect Ishkins, Olan 12 centimetralik tasarm hatasi v pratik surzumu. You walk into your home, and the first thing you see is a wall. Not a painting, not a mirror, just a stretch of plaster that does nothing but take up visual space. In a narrow entryway, that empty wall feels like a missed opportunity, but the moment you try to put furniture there, you realize the hallway is too tight. A standard console table is 20 inches deep or more, and that would leave you squeezing sideways past it every time you come through the door. So you live with the empty wall and the frustration of having nowhere to drop your keys or tuck away a pair of shoes. But there is another way, and it starts with a single piece of history. The solution is a floating console made from a reclaimed Ottoman-era wooden door panel. These decorative panels were carved between the 16th and 19th centuries, and they show up on the antiques market more often than you might think. They are not mass-produced, so each one has its own unique pattern, its own wear marks, its own story. The depth of these panels is usually only an inch or two, which makes them perfect for a slim profile. You mount them on hidden brackets against the wall, and suddenly you have a surface that is barely thicker than the wall itself. It does not eat into your walking space, but it gives you a place to set a small lamp, a bowl for keys, or a single stem in a vase. Now, let us address the mistake that most people make when they hear the word reclaimed. They assume they need to strip the piece down to bare wood and refinish it like a modern factory product. That is exactly the wrong approach. An antique door panel has spent centuries developing a patina that cannot be recreated in a workshop. That darkened color around the edges, that subtle sheen where hands have touched it over generations, those are the qualities that make it valuable. Sanding it down to raw wood would destroy its character and its monetary value. Instead, you do a light sanding, just enough to smooth any rough splinters, and then you oil it with a natural furniture oil to feed the wood and bring out the depth of the carving. That is all it needs. Before you even think about sanding, you have to source the right panel. This is where patience pays off. Decorative Ottoman door panels appear at antique dealers, architectural salvage yards, and online auctions. They were originally part of interior doors in homes and palaces, so they were made to be seen and admired. One notable example, a 16th century carved panel with ivory inlay, sold at auction for between £2,000 and £3,000. That is at the higher end of the market, but you can find simpler panels for a fraction of that price. The key is to look for a panel that is structurally sound, no deep cracks, no rot, no active insect damage. The patina should be even, and the carving should still be crisp enough to read from a short distance. Once you have your panel, you need to prepare it for the wall. The first step is to clean it gently with a soft brush to remove loose dirt and dust from the carvings. Do not use water or any strong chemical cleaner, because that could lift the patina or stain the wood unevenly. Then you do the light sanding that we mentioned earlier. Use a fine grit, something like 220, and sand only in the direction of the grain. You are not trying to remove the color, you are just knocking down any raised fibers or splinters that could catch on clothing or scratch hands. Wipe away the dust with a tack cloth and then apply a thin coat of tung oil or Danish oil. Let it soak in for 15 minutes. Wipe off the excess and leave it to cure overnight. The wood will darken slightly and the grain will pop. Now comes the mounting. Hidden brackets are the secret to making a floating console look weightless. You want brackets that are rated for at least 50 pounds because the panel itself has weight and you will be placing objects on it. The ideal depth for a slim console in a narrow hallway is between 10 and 12 inches. That gives you enough surface for a small lamp and a few everyday items while keeping at least 36 inches of clear walking space, which is the minimum recommended for comfortable passage. Measure the height of your panel and mark the bracket positions on the wall so that the top surface sits at about waist height, roughly 34 to 36 inches from the floor. That makes it easy to reach and places the decorative carving at eye level for the average person. What about the outlets and cords that always seem to be in the way? Every entryway has at least one wall outlet, and often there is a light switch or a cable for a router. This is the part that most makeover videos conveniently ignore. They show you the beautiful finished console, but they never tell you where the ugly infrastructure went. Here is the honest answer. You can tuck a storage basket beneath the floating panel. That basket does double duty. It hides the outlet by sitting directly in front of it, and it also gives you a place to drop mail, gloves, or a small pair of shoes. If you need access to the outlet, you simply slide the basket out. It is practical, it is honest, and it keeps the visual line of the console clean. Let us talk about the light in this space, because this is where the transformation becomes dramatic. Your entryway receives different light at different times of day. At noon, the sun comes through the door or window and hits the wall directly. The carved panel will cast strong shadows into its own recesses, making the pattern look bold and graphic. At 5 in the evening, the light is lower and warmer, coming in at an angle, and the wood takes on a honeyed glow. That is the moment when the carving seems to come alive, because the shadows stretch and the highlights catch the high points of the pattern. If you place a small table lamp on the console with a warm bulb, you get a third mood in the evening, a pool of gentle light that makes the entryway feel like a welcome embrace rather than a transit corridor. That variation in lighting is exactly why you need to see your materials in both conditions before you commit. When you bring home a panel, place it against your wall and look at it at noon when the light is high and cool. Then look at it again in the late afternoon when the light is low and warm. The color of the wood will shift. A panel that looks too dark in the morning may turn into a rich, glowing centerpiece in the evening. A panel that looks pale and washed out at midday might reveal unexpected red or amber undertones in the golden hour. This simple test saves you from making a mistake that would only become apparent after the panel is mounted, and the morning light exposes a color you did not expect. Now let us address the undertone conflict that happens when you mix reclaimed wood with other materials in your home. A reclaimed Ottoman panel tends to have warm, slightly reddish or amber undertones because of the aged oil and the natural oxidation of the wood over centuries. If your existing furniture has cool, gray undertones, the two will clash in daylight. They will not look like they belong together. The solution is to find a common undertone that bridges the two worlds. You can introduce a warm, neutral paint color on the wall behind the console, something in the cream or clay family that absorbs both the warmth of the wood and the coolness of the gray. A natural linen runner on the console also helps because linen has its own warm beige undertone that harmonizes with almost everything. The goal is not to hide the difference, but to make it feel intentional. What about the storage that everyone needs but no one wants to look at? We already mentioned the basket underneath, but there is more you can do without adding visual clutter. Consider a pair of small ottomans that can slide under the console. They provide discreet seating for putting on shoes, and they can be pulled out when you need an extra spot to sit. Their soft upholstery also balances the hard wood of the panel. Choose a fabric in a warm oatmeal or olive tone that picks up the warmth of the wood without competing with it. When they are tucked under the console, they look like a deliberate part of the composition rather than an afterthought. They also serve as a visual anchor that grounds the floating panel and makes it feel connected to the floor. The finish that you put on the panel is not just about appearance, it is about protection. Entryways see a lot of wear. People brush against the wall, rain drips from umbrellas, and the sun beats in through the glass. A good oil finish penetrates the wood and seals it from within, but it does not form a hard plastic layer on the surface. That is important because a hard film finish like polyurethane would eventually crack as the wood expands and contracts with humidity. Oil moves with the wood, and it is easy to repair. If the panel gets a scratch, you can simply buff a little more oil into that spot and it blends in. Reapply the oil once a year or whenever the wood starts to look dry, and the panel will outlast everything else in the room. Let us talk about the actual depth of this console, because the number matters more than you might think. Remember that we recommended 10 to 12 inches for the surface depth, but the panel itself is only 1 or 2 inches thick. So how do you get a 10-inch surface? You mount the panel on a custom-cut wooden shelf that acts as the top. That shelf can be made from a matching or contrasting wood, and it extends forward beyond the panel to give you a usable surface. The shelf is what holds your lamp, your keys, your vase. The panel itself becomes the decorative front face that hides the shelf's thickness and creates the illusion that the whole thing is a single carved piece. This is a practical compromise that gives you function and beauty without adding depth to the wall. The shelf can be made from a reclaimed piece of wood as well, or you can use a new piece of walnut or oak and stain it to match the panel. The key is to keep the grain direction consistent and to finish the shelf with the same oil so that both pieces age together. When you mount the shelf on the brackets, make sure it is level and secure, then attach the carved panel to the front edge of the shelf using wood glue and finishing nails from the back. The panel should overlap the shelf slightly so that the shelf is invisible from the front. The result is a single unified piece that appears to float against the wall, with the beautiful carving as the main visual event and the shelf as the practical extension that makes it useful. One of the most overlooked aspects of this project is the way the console changes the acoustics of the entryway. Hard surfaces like plaster and wood create echoes and reflections that make a hallway feel cold and hollow. The carved surface of the panel, with its recesses and raised patterns, breaks up sound waves and diffuses them. That might sound like a small detail, but when you walk into a home that has a carved wooden element in the entryway, the space feels quieter and more intimate. It absorbs some of the noise from the front door and makes the transition from outside to inside feel softer. This is the kind of subtle benefit that you do not notice until it is missing, but once you have it, you wonder how you ever lived without it. Now let us be honest about the maintenance routine, because a piece like this is not zero maintenance, but it is low maintenance if you know what to do. Dust the panel weekly with a soft, dry cloth. Do not use a feather duster because the feathers can snag on the carved edges. Once every 3 months, give it a light wipe with a cloth slightly dampened with water and a drop of mild soap, then dry it immediately. Once a year, apply a fresh coat of oil. That is it. The oil feeds the wood and protects it from drying out and cracking. If you live in a very dry climate or a home with forced air heating, you might want to oil it twice a year. Compare that to the maintenance of a painted wall, which needs repainting every few years to hide scuffs, and the panel comes out ahead. So here is where we end up. You started with an empty wall and a narrow hallway that felt like a lost cause. You found a piece of history that was already beautiful on its own. You prepared it with a light touch, mounted it with hidden hardware, and gave it a functional top. You hid the outlets with a basket and added ottomans for seating. You learned to appreciate how the light changes the wood throughout the day and how the carving softens the acoustics of your home. The result is not just a console. It is a daily reminder that practical decisions can also be beautiful ones. Once you have seen an entryway with a purpose, a narrow hallway with a heart, you will never look at a blank wall the same way again. Take a look at your narrowest wall and ask yourself what could live there, because the answer is not nothing. It is something with depth and surface and a story that is all yours.